Hey everybody, this is Josh Ronquist here for Heavy Debriefings, back finally with Out Today and What I Missed, this time for all of January 2024. Yes, if you haven't been keeping track with me, I have been out of commission since basically the end of October, although I did keep up with the podcast until the end of December, but basically January, I've had to recover from the flu, diabetic ketoacidosis, a double kidney infection, mental health issues, trying to help out the metal fairy with her mental health issues, and so much more. But I'm finally back, and I got 50, that's right, 50 brand new albums for January 2024 to be able to check out for your listening pleasure, hopefully. Now, this is unlike all the other weeks that I normally do Out Today and What I Missed, as I'm playing catch-up through the whole month of 2024, so basically, think of all these albums as what I missed, as all of these will be from January 1st to January 31st, and it's just so much easier to just put them all together in one batch. Coming up next week, as long as my voice holds up, that'll be for February 7th, 2024, we'll be back to the weekly schedule of how I do this, but for now, let's enjoy the catch-up of January 2024. Starting things off for 2025 is Admire the Grim with Resist. Starting things off with a Finnish melodeath band in their debut album, every track on this album hits the reaches of Finnish melodeath that you know and love. It is so melodic, it hits all the right catchy parts, and it knows when to be heavy. There are huge nods to bands like Children of Bodom, but I also hear Scandinavian things like In Flames, and of course some of the non-folky side of Ensiferum. Not necessarily the newer stuff, but some of the older stuff. The production is top-notch, the musicianship is on hand is utterly solid. It's a modern band making modern music that knows when to throw things back, so everyone who enjoys melodeath will find something to appreciate. As the band grows, I know they're going to be able to continue to find their own sound and not just wear their influences on their sleeve, and I'm very excited to see where they go from here. Now we have Aeon of Awareness with the Embracing Light of Roahenga, and I deeply apologize if I got that wrong. But this is a debut album from Germany that is a perfect display of the heavier side of melodeath, all while finding the right moments to strip things back and let you have some breathing room, and of course, the right amount of melody. It is a grand mix of that 90s melodeath sound with the right amount of black metal and death metal thrown in for good measure. From deep growls to riffs that'll be stuck in your head for days, this is fantastic display of songwriting and musicianship. The production is a bit more in that 90s raw sound, think early day At the Gates, but still full and sonically pleasing. It's an old school album, but just modern enough. Give this one a proper listen if you are a melodeath fan of any kind. Now we have Agony by Default with Of Darkness and Solitude. The sixth album from this Wyoming one-man band is some incredible work. The project has gone through many different phases over the years, and in 2025, I think they really found their footing with the symphonic and melodic black metal that they're now doing. There are still the occasional moments of melodeath thrown in, not so much the deathcore stuff that they did before, but it is still very much that blackened affair. The production is just raw enough to feel like that mid-90s black metal sound. The songwriting has vastly improved on every album, and this is easily the best work under this moniker. At 50.5 minutes, it feels like the album gives you just enough to feel satisfied, with riffs that are going to make you want to go back and listen to it all over again. This is pure, authentic black metal through and through. Give it a shot if you need some of that old school, symphonic, melodic black metal for these cold winter nights that we're experiencing. As I'm writing this, it's negative 20 degrees, so it fits perfectly. Next up, we have the debut album from Am I in Trouble with Spectrum, featuring Steve Weiner of the New York band Negative Bliss. Am I in Trouble is a band that swings for the fences at their very first at-bat and knocks it out of the park. Calling this album almost any genre feels like it's leaving something out, but I would say it's more along the lines of avant-garde metal, black metal, and a little bit of doom in there as well. You will hear so many great moments of different genres, instrumentation that you wouldn't expect, like the flute that opens and closes the album. Every song on this album is named after a color, and that color for the song is meant to represent a feeling, a location, an idea, something involving that color. It's a strange mix for the uninitiated, and especially for people who thinks that black metal is supposed to be just dark and cold all the time. But for those that listen to left of center music, this will be right up your alley. It's blackened, it's doomy, it's oddball. It's a real sense of how colors and emotions are tied hand in hand. If that piques your interest, you'll want to look out for this one. It's worth every spin that you give it. Now we have Art of Disorder with Awakening of the Prophet. Wouldn't you know it, it's another debut album, but this time we're going all the way to Hungary. And what a showstopper of a debut album this prog metal album truly is. It's a full-on concept album of an entity that the world may or may not need. The production is exactly what it needs to be, where it's polished but it's not overly done, where it sounds unauthentic and not real. The songwriting is proggy but not wanky, and the musicianship is so truly warranted of knowing how to write music. I hear elements of bands like Dream Theater, Pagan's Mind, and Circus Maximus, along with their own influences, making this album something that sounds familiar, but it's brand new. I hope this is a good sign for prog in 2025 and what is to come. It's only January, but this is some of the best prog that I've heard in a little bit of time. Every prog release coming up for the rest of the year has a lot to compete with. Prog metal fans, make sure you don't miss out on this one. Now we got some classic occult rock and doom rock from the band Avatarium with Between You, God, the Devil, and the Dead. In 12 years, Avatarium have put out 6 albums, so basically once every 2 years, more or less, and they always seem to find a way to outdo themselves. Every album seems to be a new way to simultaneously sound brand new, but be a perfect throwback at the same time. This time I hear a lot of 70s hard rock and modern occult rock, so imagine a mix of Deep Purple, Blue Oyster Cult, and Blood Ceremony, and you're getting closer to what this album is all about. The production truly gives this 1974 feel. The songs are endlessly catchy, and the overall listening experience is so satisfying if you appreciate the bands of the past and the revival bands of now. Avatarium has been doing this for so long, and they know what works and what doesn't, and I appreciate that every album that they make, they try to have its own distinct feel behind it. This new chapter is fantastic, and it's got me excited for everything else that will come from the band in the future. Up now is the sophomore album from this band from Belarus, known as Bel Morte, with Pearl Hunting. The sophomore album from this band is something that's truly a wonder to behold. From authentic world instrumentation, like there's over 22 real instruments on this album, distinct instruments, not just guitar tracking over and over again. It's dark, it's catchy, it's some of the most insane vocal lines from Bel Morte herself. It's just truly making a name for themselves with Pearl Hunting, creating what could be one of the best symphonic gothic folk metal albums of the 21st century. This is not your typical album, and you will hear that immediately upon the first listen, and by the end you will be so entranced you'll have to give it multiple spins time and time again. This is how it's done, folks. This is the true wonder of an album, and it's really going to go down as one of the best symphonic gothic folk metal albums of 2025. Now we have the sophomore album from the Slovakian band known as Bezna with Krasno. This combines some of the best elements of progressive and post-black tied together. So imagine a band that combines something like Mole and Harakiri for the Sky to create some progressive post-black. It's unlike anything that you've ever heard before, but it does have some familiarity to it all. It's proggy in just the right moments, letting that black metal shine through, but the instrumentation, the riffs, the production style, it all makes the music stand out amongst all the other post-black bands currently going. And what might be one of the best parts of the album is the fact that it hits you so quick in just under 31 minutes, and it leaves you wanting more. This is an album that will instantly start over once you finish it. Seriously, I mean that. Post-black has had an incredible year in 2024, and if this is any indication, it is off to a great start in 2025. Every other band in the genre better step up. Bezna has entered the game. Up now we have The Big Deal with Electrified. The sophomore album from this band is one of the purest, catchiest AOR albums I've heard in 2025, which I know doesn't really say a lot considering it's only January, but you'll see from these other 50 albums that I've covered, there's some more AOR coming up. This Serbian band knows exactly how to write a riff, a solo, a composition that will be an earworm for you for days, and will not stop until you play it again. The band showcases its instrumentation and its musicianship by playing simple yet very effective riffs, knocking you out with an overly heavy riff or a riff that you simply won't see coming that will knock your socks off. 42.5 minutes and 12 songs filled with everything that you love about hard rock from the 70s to today, done with modern production value. If you want a catchy, melodic hard rock band and an earworm that you won't get out of your head for days, check out The Big Deal. They're going to be a pretty big deal. Up now is Blacktooth with Antidote. 3 albums into this band's career, and they have created a modern hard rock album that is as heavy as it is poppy. It hits some of the heaviest riffs that you could hear on modern hard rock radio, while adding some moments of pop that would make Lady Gaga or Kesha or Charlie XCX blush. This German trio sounds like the perfect American hard rock radio band, and one can only hope that they will be on American hard rock radio at some point. If you just want something that is tailor-made for the 2020s, Antidote is the album for you. But again, you gotta have that appreciation for the modern hard rock and pop. Now we have Bonfire with Higher Ground. 18 albums into Bonfire's moniker, and this German band has yet to miss a step. They are writing a mix of melodic metal, melodic rock, AOR, and something that feels right at home in 1986. But it also makes so much sense in 2025. Granted, Hans Ziller is the only original member of the band left, but he surrounds himself with people who know how to write and play for the music, and puts bands who started around the same time as Bonfire to shame. Put this band up with the latest Motley Crue album or Trickster, and it's not even close. This is how you make 1980s music stand the test of time. Let Bonfire continue to burn our ears for years and years to come. Next, we have Caustic Abyss with Eternal Winter Crypt. Another debut album here, but this time from my neck of the woods in Minnesota, featuring past and present members of Coffin Rot, Plague of Stars, Echoes of the Fallen, and Grand Demise of Civilization. You have a band that is pure death metal that puts just the right amount of melodeath into their sound to really stand out, especially with the bands here in Minnesota. This is a brutal and punishing album when it wants to be, and it hits you with the occasional melodic riff that you won't see coming and will just leave you wanting more. At a second under 37 minutes, it comes with a nearly perfect opening band set length that will leave you wanting to hear more in the sophomore album. Fantastic work all around, and it's time for you to check out some Minnesota death metal. Now we have the band Clouds with Desperans. I still remember all the way back in 2014 when Clouds put out their debut album, Dolu, and I was absolutely floored by what I heard. 11 years later and 7 albums into the band's career, they have only improved with age. The band knows how to create an eerie, dirge-filled, atmospheric doom sound that can be replicated but never duplicated. On Desperans, the band feels like they are at their strongest point to date, with a production that is raw yet clear, vocals that feel like a tomb being unearthed, instrumentation that feels like a Celtic funeral, and the overall sense that Doom in 2025 is gonna be great. This is a deep, dark, depressing album, and everything I want out of atmospheric death doom. If you like that as much as I do, you will need this brand new album from Clouds immediately. Up next is Crimson Storm with Living on the Bad Side. The debut album from this Italian heavy metal and speed metal band is everything you want out of the genre. It's fast, unrelenting, catchy, and fueled by fire. This is everything that you love about the likes of Enforcer, Riot V, and that early day Skullfist, especially Bad for Good. Mwah. Just shy of 34 minutes long and 9 tracks means that this is all killer and no room for filler. This is going to be one of the speed metal albums of 2025. Mark my words, this is how it's done, folks. Now we have Crucial Velocity with Controller, the sophomore album from this conglomeration of members of King Diamond, Shaolin Death Squad, and Thought Chamber. Wow, Thought Chamber, that is a name I have not heard in a while. This is a brand new discovery to me, and I am floored. It is that 80s and 90s style progressive metal done through a 2020s filter, and a production style that is just what I'm looking for, and it's done with such finesse and tenacity. The production is so slick, yet authentic. The musicianship on display is superb. The songwriting brings back those glory days of bands like Fate's Warning and Crimson Glory. I miss that classic sound of that old school progressive metal so much because 7 and 8 strings became mandatory. If you like me and you just want to be able to check this out immediately, because this style of prog metal needs to come back. I'm so glad that Crucial Velocity is making that happen. Up next is a band that I completely apologize for butchering the name of, but I am trying. It is Deuce Sabaoth with Circle of Death. Sadly, in the worst of times, some of the best art comes out, and that is clearly true coming from this debut album from this band. A Ukrainian band that is so piano-driven, yet is a mix of black metal, doom metal, and it's baroque as well. Not baroque, the musical style, baroque. The bands can hit hyperspeed of black metal, the slowest dirges of doom, and it's all tied together with the the piano of that Baroque style that fits like a glove. And speaking of those Baroque moments, it sounds like a completely strange idea on paper to do this style, but all you have to do is hear it implemented between the acoustic guitars, the piano, the vocals, and you'll see how everything ties together. It is a dark concept album, challenging faith and the life cycles of humanity. It's a black metal album through and through, but those added moments of doom and Baroque is just the frosting on the dark, evil devil's food cake. If you are into black metal, do not ignore this one. Give it a proper listen and prepare to be floored. Now we have the band Dragon Knight with Legions, and wouldn't you know it, this is another debut album. This time, again, coming from Finland with some of the best power metal I've heard in the last couple years. Then again, power metal has not really been good in 2024 outside of a few exceptions, all because it feels like bands are afraid to be a power metal band nowadays. But this is an unapologetic power metal band, and they're not afraid to be epic, cheesy, fantastical, and over the top as they want to be. That's exactly how I like my power metal. Don't dip a toe in, do a cannonball into the pool of power metal. This is all the time-tested cliches that work for a reason. Awesome guitar and keyboard solos, soaring vocals, that sense of power metal that has come back from the grave of 2024 to make 2025 start off on the right side of history in this genre. This is epic power metal to an absolute T, just as it always should be. Pick this one up now if you enjoy the genre. It will reinvigorate your love of the genre. Guaranteed. Now we have the Ferrymen with Iron Will. One of the best supergroups in metal in general have returned with their fourth album. After creating one of the best melodic metal albums of the 2020s with One More River to Cross, was the Ferrymen going to try to outdo that album or go into a different direction? Well, they kind of did a bit of both, but more of the latter than the former. While the over-the-top, epic, and power metal is still here, the band went into a more melodic direction on this album instead of going full speed ahead. They were writing more slower, mid-paced tracks that have a more grandiose feel behind them. Instead of the faster tracks, more grander sounds than pushing everything to 11, and letting the music do the talking instead of showing off every tool of the trade. Depending on the type of person you are, this is a better album. I'm still torn on which one I like more, but I'll figure that out in time. But I will say that melodic metal is going to have a tough year trying to beat this album. The Ferrymen is one of the most underrated and underappreciated bands of this genre for a good reason, but they should be unsung no longer. They deserve all the praise that they get. Up next, we have Gravedigger with Bone Collector. For that 22nd album from, 22 studio albums? Gravedigger is on their 22nd studio album? Why, yes they are. And they went back to the drawing board on this one. For years, the band has been getting more and more grandiose in their sound, more epic, more power metal, more dynamic. Bone Collector is the exact opposite of all that jazz. This is pure heavy metal, speed metal, and power metal, all for the 2025 ages. This is all the kills, fast, heavy, and that classic Gravedigger sound that you love and know so much. This is what makes what's old new again, and make it some of the best work to date. Sometimes it just takes stripping that creativity to reinvigorate your love of the music that you create, and that's exactly what's happened here with Bone Collector. It'll only take one listen to fall in love with that classic 80s Gravedigger sound once again, but they truly have done it, and they've made it their own. Now we have one of the best melodeath albums of 2025, and I'm pretty sure I'll be saying that at the end of the year as well. It is the sophomore album from the Halo Effect, with March of the Unheard. The sophomore album from this amazing group of ex-In Flames members, from the very beginning to just several years ago, is seriously the band's best work together. And I mean that from some of the stuff that they've done when they were in Flames. Everything that worked so well on their debut album has been pushed to the forefront. The melodic parts are more melodic. The diverse moments are saved for just the right spots. The clean vocals are on display, but more on the backside of the album in just a couple songs, and used sparingly. And the band has created that 90s melodeath sound in 2025 to the best of their abilities. This will be one of the best melodeath albums of the year, if not the 2020s in general. Mark my words, they took their outstanding debut and made it pale in comparison to March of the Unheard. I'm flabbergasted at how incredible of an album this is. But I am so happy that the fire under the band was not a one-time fluke. I'm floored. And if you check this one out, you will be too. And now for one of the best post-black albums of 2025, and I absolutely mean that. It is the brand new album from Harakiri for the Sky with Sun Scorched. Now, to be completely transparent, I've had a lot of ups and downs with Harakiri on a personal level, not a musical level. But one thing I can never take away from these guys is that they've only gotten better with every passing album, taking that idea of post-black and making it truly their own. And by that I mean this is the most diverse album the band has put out to date. It is not just pure black metal from start to finish. There's some of the most melodic moments that have ever happened in the band. And it's also some of the most devastating music that they've ever put out, featuring so many great guest appearances from members of Groza to Austere to Svalbard and so much more. They even do a Radiohead cover of all bands to end the album. A true tearjerker of a post-black album with diversity, great guest appearances, and what might be the band's finest work to date. And this just might push them to the next level of popularity. And if that happens, the band deserves it. Absolutely one of the finest post-black albums of 2025. Bravo. Up now we have Harvest with Maelstrom. Some more killer German music here in the form of a debut album from this atmospheric black metal band, taking what made their debut album stand out and redefining everything about it. Maelstrom is really a maelstrom of a black metal album. Grandiose riffs, crystal clear production, soul-destroying vocals, and that overall sense of dread the music calls for, making this a black metal album that is worthy of any black metal fan's ears in 2025, even if you're elitist. It's a dark, emotional listen, but one of the best albums always are emotional. Give this one a proper listen and be thankful you got to check this one out. This might go under the radar, and it shouldn't. Alright, coming up next is a Swedish band and a Swedish album title that I'm going to absolutely butcher, so if you want to have a good laugh, listen to an American with a Swedish last name, try to pronounce them Swedish. We have Hexkapal with Jordens Blood och Grevens Grip. If I got anywhere near that, please give me some recognition. I feel like I butchered every single word. But straight up, I have no idea what the lyrics are for this album, despite having that Swedish last name. I don't speak a lick of Swedish, as you just heard. Maybe one day, but not this day. Anyways, that's all to say that none of that takes away from how dark, evil, haunting, and petrifying those vocals sound when it comes to this music. It sounds like some of the most blood-curdling black metal screams I've heard in quite some time, and easily some of the most sinister, clean vocals I've heard in black metal. This album feels like a soundtrack to a B-grade independent horror film in the best way possible. It feels like a portal to hell that has just opened up and is about to swallow us whole. Giggity. And the band name translates to Witch Chapel, and yeah, just listening to any track on this album makes that add up nicely. This is going to go down as one of the most sinister black metal albums of the 2020s, let alone 2025. This is a pure gem of a black metal album. Go pick this one up and maybe find your favorite blankie to be able to hide under and grip onto as you listen to this one. Now going into a completely different direction, we have Hazard with The Third Dimension. This Canadian thrash quartet made an album called The Third Dimension, which I really want to believe is a reference to the Treehouse of Horror episode, where Homer goes into 3D and Professor Frank calls it Thy Third Dimension. It's probably not, but I'm choosing to believe it. Hazard has created some of my kind of thrash metal, a killer mix of Death Angel, Havoc, Warbringer, and Gamma Bomb to create a signature blend of thrash that is as much fun as it is heavy and spellbinding. It's B-grade grindhouse horror imagery, 80s through the 2000s thrash, and something that I absolutely want to see in that live setting. It might even get me into the pit one day. I want to see these guys only get bigger and better from here on out, as this is the kind of thrash people should be listening to. They are the saviors of thrash in 2025. Go check this one out and you'll see what I mean. Up next is Infested Angel with their debut album Theranodes to Eternal Despair. Straight out of the UK with this debut splab of death metal is one of the most pummeling albums in death metal I've heard for a long time, but it's so dynamic as well. It has a unique way of having super melodic riffs in the death metal genre, along with brutal growls and an almost constant blast beats from start to finish, only stopping the blasts at appropriate times. It feels like a death metal album with that mid-90s black metal metal sound, which is quite odd on paper, but I swear it works. At just a second over the 1 hour mark, if you include the 2 bonus tracks, it might feel a bit long, but once you listen, the music goes by so fast. This is a killer display of how to make dynamic death metal that will stay engaging to you from start to finish. Alright folks, we have finally hit the halfway point of this gigantic 50 album mini review stuff that I do known as Out Today and What I Missed, and we're starting off that second half with Kilmara with Journey to the Sun. They put out their debut album when I graduated high school in 2007, and the latest release, Journey to the Sun, marks their 6th release. But this Spanish melodic metal band does that perfect blend of crushing riffs that you would never hear in an 80s glam rock band. It gets super heavy and full-on double bass, but it also has melodies and harmonies that you would only hear in melodic metal and AOR. It's an interesting but winning combination that makes every album appeal to the old school and new school fans of hard rock and metal out there. Every song is so catchy no matter the tempo, with outrageously catchy guitar solos and a sense of wonder that you just don't seem to find in a lot of bands these days. This is the glorious album that should not be looked over. Check it out for yourself, and if it sounds appealing to you at all, seriously, you need to listen to more AOR in your life. And this is coming from a guy that covers a lot of death metal and black metal. You just may have found your new favorite band. Next, we have Cosmogonia with Ayala, and I hope I pronounced that right. Another brand new discovery to me, despite this being the band's sophomore album. This feels like if Helveti was a more sophisticated and hailing from Greece. You don't normally hear about a lot of Greek folk metal bands, so it was a treat to find one that could be as brutal and as catchy as this one is. The production is a bit dirty and raw, but it feels so good with the music on display. It's very captivating, and it captures your interest from beginning to end. And it's so great to hear that with this style of fantastic music that's going on. Whether you're into folk metal or melodeath, you owe it to yourself to give this one a spin. I think you'll find that folk metal might be coming back in 2025. Up now, we have Labyrinth with In the Vanishing Echoes of Goodbye. The 10th album from this legendary Italiano progressive power metal band is some of the finest work the band has put out to date. They know what works and what doesn't at this point, and while they're not afraid to stretch those boundaries out a bit, the album is filled to the brim with that classic progressive power metal that put them on the map in the first place. Whether they are going all guns blazing or slowing things down a bit, everything on display is that signature sound done to perfection. If you dig the likes of Angra, early day Stradivarius, and of course, because it features so many members of Labyrinth, Vision Divine, you will love the brand new album from Labyrinth. It's exactly what we need in progressive power metal in 2025. Now we have some more melodic rock and AOR from the Brazilian AOR band known as Landfall with Wide Open Sky. The band is now 3 albums into their career, and that momentum just continues to rise higher and higher. This is everything to appreciate about melodic rock and AOR to an absolute T. Such catchy melodies and harmonies, soaring vocals, and that right kind of solos that you'll remember for days. Remember when solos just weren't technical, Olympic-style fretboard work, and they were actually things that you could hum along to even if you couldn't play guitar? This feels like that modern throwback that we could all use right now, and it puts you at ease while you're listening to it. Like, this is one of the most relaxing but catchy hard rock and AOR bands and albums that I've heard in quite a bit. When AOR is done right, it is just so satisfying, and that is exactly what Landfall delivers with Wide Open Sky. Up now, we have Lunar with their brand new album, Tempora Mutantur. And Alex, if I got that wrong, I deeply apologize. After putting out one of my favorite albums of 2023 with The Illusionist, seriously, go check that one out if you're a prog fan. I am so curious to see what Lunar was going to do from here. The answer came in the form of this brand new album that feels like another loving tribute to all things prog, but a little more on the heavier side. The fact that the album starts off with a track like A Summer to Forget, which goes from sounding like something like Thank You Scientist, which I was totally not expecting, and then going into some BT Bam riffs, wow, it's so gradual you might even notice it. But as heavy and as brutal as the album does indeed get, and it is some of the heaviest stuff that Lunar has done to date, featuring influences like BT Bam and Opeth, it is balanced out by moments in the vein of Primus and Savatage and even Styx. The Styx parts really threw me off. It just gives everything a true prog feel, and that prog fans are sure to appreciate. While I'm not sure if they'll ever get more interesting introspective than the lyrics that they do on The Illusionist, the lyrics here sure give it a try, with a bit more of an allegoric feel than metaphorical, dealing with the passage of seasons over the year and the emotions that go along with it. Overall, it is a fantastic display of prog for the heaviest of fans to those that just appreciate masterclass musicianship, especially of that 70s and 80s sound. If you want a tribute to prog, give this one a listen. Up next, we have Martyrion with Gaia Uprising. And I really hope I got your guys' name right. I apologize if I got it wrong. But this is the fourth album from this long-running German melodeath band that sounds like some of the most inspired melodeath I've heard in quite some time. From its most emotional riffs to songs that are fast and full of fury, the band covers all the ground that it needs to in melodeath. You'll hear that Scandinavian style of melodeath, you'll hear the thrashier German side of melodeath, and their own influences to create a sound that is something for everybody while sounding authentic and engaging. No matter how you like your melodeath, you are sure to find something to appreciate about this one. Go pick it up now. It is one of my favorite discoveries of 2025 so far. Next is Master Sword with Toying with Time. Apparently, according to Metallum, the band broke up, although they are back now with their third album. And it's clear that this obvious love letter to the Legend of Zelda series, I mean, isn't it one of the best feelings when you finally get Master Sword? Regardless, it feels like such a solid display of cheesy and nerdy power metal done in just the right way, just in my style. Instead of everything being over the top, Master Sword is a bit more subtle in their musical style. Don't get me wrong, the music is power metal through and through, and you might already find that over the top and cheesy to begin with. But the difference is, even with the gimmick of being so Zelda-inspired, it still doesn't feel like a gimmick. It just feels appropriate, and it knows how to kick things down and when to step back. With a killer production style, the songs truly shine. This is how you make power metal feel inclusive and supporting of the music and themes on display. This is just a fun album from start to finish, and seriously, I think we all need that in 2025, don't we? Up next is Medusian with Library. And I must thank Christian over at the Harsh Vocals podcast for recommending this one. And seriously, go check out the Harsh Vocals podcast. Easily the best extreme metal podcast that I'm aware of, and you just might find it to be your new favorite one as well. Regardless of all of that, the debut album from Sweden's Medusian is one of the finest displays of the genre that I've heard since I discovered Zoenheim, like over a decade ago, which feels very, very wrong at this point. This has everything that you want from the genre. It's dramatic, it's captivating, it's dark, it's filled to the brim with musicianship and songwriting talent that the bands have been doing in this style for decades still can't even achieve. And talk about catchy. This is how you create something that can be so dark as symphonic black metal, but make it so memorable at the same time. What a fantastic display of music going on here. Seriously, if you love symphonic black metal, this may be one of the best albums of 2025 in that style. I think you'll be amazed. Next up, going from black metal to death metal with Mutagenic Host and the Diseased Machine. This is my kind of old school death metal done right. This is a debut album from a UK band that feels just as old school as it does modern at the same time. You'll hear bands like Obituary and Morbid Angel and that early day Edge of Sanity stuff before they started getting proggy all over this album, but with just enough references to 21st century death metal that it just truly makes them stand out amongst all the revival old school death metal bands out there. It can be dark, it can be cavernous, but it can also be tight and precise and especially pummeling. It has it all, sometimes all in one song. Revival OSDM is alive and well in 2025, and it's being done in the right hands with bands like Mutagenic Host. Give this one a proper spin and see if you agree. Coming up next is Nesdam with Find the Truth, and I really hope I got that name right, and if I didn't, I deeply apologize. So many great frontmen have originally come from behind the drums and into the forefronts of the stage. And that's exactly what's being done here with Patrick Madsen. Finding life's unexpected and expected trials and tribulations, and finding your voice for it under the Nesdam moniker, these songs are tailor-made for the heavier side of radio rock without losing any of the catchy moments that you would expect from FM stations. The lyrics can really tug at the heartstrings if you let it, as so many of these things will be very relatable, all done through the style of hard rock, electronic, and some pop moments. That will be a wide range of music listeners will find something to love, hopefully. It's well worth your time if you appreciate the style to give this one a spin. I know not everyone's going to check this one out, especially those that come to my list for doom or prog or esoteric blackened death metal. You might not gravitate towards this one, but I think it's worth your time to at least check out a song or two and go into it with an open mind. I'm glad I did. Up now, we have the Night Flight Orchestra with Give Us the Moon. It still blows my mind that the guy who wrote the lyrics to Steel Bath Suicide created the Night Flight Orchestra. It's astounding to me that this band is on their 7th album when it still feels like their debut album just came out a few years ago. Now, it's been 13 years, but the message of the band has yet to be lost in translation in that time. It's just as much fun in the AOR and classic radio rock genres as it's ever been. Sometimes they gravitate more towards the 80s, other times it's the 70s. Give Us the Moon is definitely in the latter. It feels like the best album 1977 never gave us. Speed from Soilwork is back, but he has still given us some of his finest work, his best clean vocal performances, and showcasing the power of music that from over 50 years ago can still be powerful, and I'm still all here for it. It's fun, catchy, and an exciting album from start to finish that is sure to make any AOR fan, classic rock fan, prog rock fan, or even if you're just a fan of Speed's work from Soilwork. Even the most diehard death metal elitists should give this one a shot and see if it can melt the icy hearts that are inside of you. It just may be what you need. Now we have the debut album from the Obsidian, Resurrection, with As Darkness Falls. I have been chomping at the bit, waiting for this band to finally put out their debut album. Well, 20 years after their first demo, they've finally done it, and all I can say is it was more than worth the wait. This is everything I love about death metal, black metal, symphonic metal, all the right kinds of thrash, melded together to create something that feels authentically evil, be it in the mind or the realities of life. The music can change on the turn of a dime, but it's still feels all natural. Granted, 3 of these songs were from the original demo. 20 years later, they've just been updated enough, along with brand new tracks to fill the album out. Had you not known that information, you would swear all of these songs were made in 2024 and released in January 2025. This is an awesome display of what can be done with thought-provoking musicality and lyrics with a production style that just pummels you from pillar to post. All I ask now is that the follow-up LP not take another 20 years. Thank you. Coming up now, we have Oreophagus with Revelations from the Void. A big thanks to Carrie from Metal Geeks and the MSR cast for the recommendation here, as this is Spanish death doom that is a surprisingly great genre in the 2020s, and it continues here with the 3rd album from this outfit. Just a bit over 48 minutes, it's a bit on the shorter side for this genre that is ever so close to actually really being funeral doom. You will hear moments of bands like Shape of Despair, Mournful Congregation, and the heaviest and doomiest sides of Paradise Lost all over this one. It's dark, depressing. It really feels like you stepped into the void and the only escape is letting the album finish. A fantastic display of doom in the winter times of 2025 is something that I can always get behind, and I'm so happy to hear an album like this in the dark, cold times that I currently live in Minnesota. Literally and figuratively. Check out this giant slab of death doom now. Now we have Patriarch, who was formerly Batushka, with their debut album, technically under the name Patriarch. It's something I'm not even going to be able to attempt to try to pronounce, so just look at the title. I completely missed the boat on how Batushka and the controversy of the name change, and all I can gather is that they put out one album, went to court, and now the band's changed its name to Patriarch. Thankfully, the name change did not affect the quality of music, except maybe made it better, as this is some of the best gothic-tinged black metal I've heard so far this year. Again, it's only January, but there's been so much great music already this year. I'd be lying if I said I knew the story of the album, how it's all connected, the lyrics being sung and screamed, or even how to pronounce the title album, as I've already shown off. But you don't need to know Bulgarian or Polish to be able to appreciate this album. The vocal lines can send chills down your spine regardless. Mixed in their very evil-sounding black metal, you will have an album that is not for the faint of heart. It's everything you want this style to be, with the production being so raw in the right way, and the musicality on display being thought-provoking, and it makes you curious as to what's to come next. A mighty fine display of black metal to start off the year is always a good thing. Now we move on to Rats of Gomorrah with Infectious Vermin. Another band with another name change here. Originally under the name of Divide, Rats of Gomorrah have turned into a duo, putting out their technically debut album, Infectious Vermin, and this is a killer display of what the brutality of death metal with that old school sound is all about. It's raw, aggressive, and lets just enough time for you to be able to catch your breath before being pummeled again into oblivion. Morbid Angel fans should be all over this one. Considering this album is created with just guitar, drums, and vocals by this duo who was originally in Divide, Riptide, it feels like they've never missed a step while still being able to progress into what they are now. A brutal death metal album that I have a good feeling may be on a lot of top albums at 2025 lists come the end of the year, as long as you check it out. Up next is one of the best albums of 2025 so far, with Raven Blood and Absence. The fourth album from the Spanish band is easily the band's best work to date. Progressing into a pure melodeath band over the years, this is one of the heaviest melodeath albums I've come across in a very long time, all while having the right amount of melodies and harmonies to fit perfectly into the sound. It feels like a dark mix of Omnium Gatherum and Unleashed mixed together, and I love every second of it. 11 songs and nearly 53 minutes for this LP feels very appropriate, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Every track hits and it leaves you wanting more, but if you want some brutal melodeath, Raven Blood is the band for you. Now we got Reek of Death with Mors in Tabula. The debut release from this Austrian death metal band hits so hard. Filled with horror movie nods, knowing when to be brutal, when to show off some melody and harmony. It's sparingly, but it's in there. And some of the most grotesque, in the best way possible, vocals by Carrie Pickler. It won't be for everyone, but if you want this kind of death metal that knows exactly what it is and it expands just enough without genre bending, this is a short and sweet display of death metal. At 9 tracks and just over 29 minutes, come in, get eviscerated, and left battered and bloody. Reek of Death have put out a fantastic brutal death album. Next, we have Riptide with Of Conquest and Downfall. My goodness, another debut album from a German band this month. This time, it's in the form of power thrash. There's no two ways about it. There is a huge inspiration of Blind Guardian, especially in the vocals, and also a band like Running Wild throughout this entire album. Definitely more the former than anything. But they are not ripping anyone off. They have their own style that blends their influences into something that is truly their own. The songs are catchy and memorable with just the right amount of power thrash, thrash metal, and power metal going on to make it feel adventurous, mesmerizing, and full of wonder. Mix that with lyrics that fit the mood, and you have an album that feels like it should have been written both in 1987 and 2025. If you're feeling adventurous, you should give this one a shot and see if it's for you. You may have found a new favorite discovery in power thrash. Coming up next is Ross, pronounced R-O-S, with Salvatore. Now we have some Polish symphonic gothic metal making its debut, and this is exactly what you want out of that 2000s gothic symphonic metal sound. It's the right kind of operatic vocals, it's heavy and aggressive in just the right ways, and it makes you feel uneasy at times, mainly due to that gothic feel, which is the best kind of gothic metal, by the way. This is an album that does go over an hour, but it flies by in that time if you love this style. It also helps that the music is very diverse, from the heaviest side of the genre to acoustic to folk, and the occasional electronic moment that might make you turn your head, but it makes you pay attention. If you miss the glory days of this genre, you need Ross in the catalog to see how it's done in 2025. Now, I can only hope that more bands aren't afraid to still be symphonic gothic. I really miss it. And now for something that's a little more straightforward, but no less heavy. It is Stick to Your Guns with Keep Planting Flowers. This album will hit you like a punch to the face. Stick to Your Guns are back with their 8th album in 20 years, almost an album every other year if you try to look at it that way. But this is a blitz of hardcore that comes with 10 tracks, 24 minutes, and by the end of it, you'll have the whole album on repeat, and hey, it won't even be an hour. From the heaviest of hardcore moments to the right moments of melodic hardcore, this is signature Stick to Your Guns that knows how to keep your interest. All of the fat has been trimmed off of this album, leaving you with an album that you're going to keep coming back to time and time again. This is how you mix hardcore and melodic hardcore done in the right way and know how to keep it catchy. And now for the exact opposite of what I just got done talking about. This is Synaptic with Enter the Void, in a genre that might be existing for the first time since the early days of Revocation. Enter the Void by Synaptic combines the best of tech death, and it combines elements of so many other types of music in that great genre-bending style that I love so much about those early Revocation albums, especially Chaos of Forms, to create something that they are truly making their own. Not being tied down to any particular style for too long, the band knows when to turn on a dime and create something of pure chaos and that technical, progressive death metal sound, all while maintaining a sense of consciousness over the music. It's a brutal display that can also be a crash course on how to be unique. It's not for the faint of heart, this is truly for the eclectic tech death fan. If you don't mind genre bending, you should give this one a shot. You just may have found a new favorite discovery with Synaptic. Up next, we have Thy Kingdom Will Burn with The Loss and Redemption. This is the third album from this Finnish outfit, and it's one of the most genuine melodeath albums I've heard in quite a while. While this band has that Finnish melodeath sound all over this album, they also know when to change things up at the right times by switching things more to that Swedish melodeath sound, or maybe even going a little more blackened, or even more straight up metal. There are some clean vocals on this one that fit right along with the screams and the growls that fill out the rest of the vocal line, and the overall vibe of this thing is just such a great thing to hear. It's a dark and enduring album that will capture your interest from beginning to end. This is how you innovate in a genre like melodeath, by just doing that simple thing of being yourself. Up next is Veil of Conspiracy with Shape of Grief. Another album I must thank Christian from the Harsh Vocals podcast for turning me on to. Again, check out the Harsh Vocals podcast for one of the best extreme metal podcasts you're going to find. The third album from this Italian band has plenty of funeral doom in their sound. It's a winning combination for someone like me when you want something that's dark, moody, depressing, and hits so hard on the emotional heartstrings. It also has this overall sense of musicality that you just won't find in a lot of other bands. The fact that they can combine these genres of death doom, funeral doom, and just the slightest bit of prog and make everything make sense is incredible to me, and I'm so thankful they could pull this off. They started off more as a progressive band and have gotten so doomy over the years, and with this album being basically a pure funeral doom album with the slightest elements of death doom and prog, it's easily the best funeral doom album of 2025. It's quite the shift, but it's a rewarding one. This is the album for you if you love that darkest, deepest of funeral doom. Next up, we have Weed Demon with the Doom Scroll. And if you couldn't tell by the name and the album title, this is Stoner Doom. And I don't really cover as much Stoner Doom as you would think I would, but I've become quite picky with the genre. You really gotta do something that strikes a chord with me to grab my attention. And that's exactly what Weed Demon have done with the Doom Scroll. There is something about Weed Demon that just does it for me with their sound. It's not your traditional two-note riffs that goes on for way too long. It's heavy, doomy, dynamic, and it's filled with a sense of agony among its more carefree weed-inspired moments. Maybe it's because it reminds me so much of the band Conan that I really appreciate this album. It also really helps that a bonus track on this album is actually Willie the Pimp by Frank Zappa. It's the best song on the album, guaranteed. The third album from this Ohio band just does the genre right. Check it out and you just may agree. And finally, we're ending with some more AOR melodic rock from the band Wildness with Avenger. We end things with this Swedish band, whose fourth album from these rockers has a sincere sense of melodic rock that just feels right at home. They of course do the AOR genre justice, but they just have a different sensibility about it that can only be described by saying you have to listen to it to get it. This album is fun, whether it goes a bit faster, a bit softer, more straight ahead, more radio rock, whatever. If you dig AOR, Wildness needs to be a band that you check out, as they are putting out some of the finest music of the genre with Avenger. Check it out and thank me later. And there you go, folks, 50 brand new albums, from the lightest of AOR to the most brutal of death metal to the most experimental of prog to the darkest, deepest moments of black metal and everything in between. So what did you think? Did I pick out some good albums? Did I pick out some bad albums? Did I leave anything out? Please let me know in the comments down below. And of course, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I'm tried to rest up the best I can in the beginning of January, but I'm back here now, and hopefully I'll be back to 100% as soon as possible. So if my voice is cracking or sounds more annoying than it usually does, I do apologize, but I am still in recovery mode, and I really hope that this satisfied everything for January 2025. And until next week, for February 7th, 2025, for Out Today and What I Missed, this is Josh Runquist for the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel saying, see ya.